Henry Mason watched his crewmates die around him one by one as the ruthless alien Hirogen pounded his ship into scrap metal, and he knew that it was all over. Humanity was finished. There was no stopping the brutal Hirogen Empire. They were just too powerful, Henry thought, as he slumped over in the smoke-filled cockpit, covered in blood, his life fading away. They had advanced technology, massive battle fleets, and an empire that spanned a vast swathe of the galaxy. Dozens of alien races had already been crushed under their boot heels. Henry's ship had been part of an expeditionary force sent to make first contact with the Hirogen, but the moment they exited hyperspace near a Hirogen system, a massive enemy fleet attacked them without warning or mercy. The humans were hopelessly outgunned. Their puny ships were decimated in the onslaught, like insects being swatted by a cruel child. Within minutes, Henry's vessel was a flaming wreck, venting atmosphere, the crew dead or dying. "This is Henry Mason of the UES Dauntless," Henry gasped into his suit's comms, barely clinging to consciousness as he recorded one final log entry. "We have failed. The Hirogen are unstoppable. Humanity will fall like all the rest. It's over. There's nothing we can—" Henry trailed off as he noticed something strange on his flickering display. A sensor reading, barely visible through the static. A tiny gap in the Hirogen's shield harmonics. A 1 in a million weakness. Henry's pain-fogged mind processed this information. A desperate idea formed. With the last of his strength, Henry hauled himself to the weapons console and diverted all remaining power to the forward rail cannons. Proximity alarms blared as the Hirogen flagship loomed ahead, its killing blow imminent. Henry targeted the strange shield vulnerability and hit the firing stud with a blood-stained fist. The human weapon spat one last defiant volley. The projectiles struck the Hirogen flagship in a precise location, and to Henry's shock, they pierced right through its shields like they weren't even there. The rounds plunged deep into the mighty warship and found its reactor core. Henry averted his eyes as a blinding flash filled the viewports. The Hirogen flagship vanished in a titanic explosion. Flaming debris peppered the hulls of the surrounding vessels. The enemy fleet fell into chaos at this unexpected destruction of their command ship. As Henry watched in amazement, the alien ships broke off their attack and fled, like whipped dogs running from their master. He couldn't believe it. He, a lone human, had just struck a critical blow against the unstoppable Hirogen, exposing a fatal flaw that could change everything. "This is Henry Mason of the UES Dauntless," Henry shouted into his comms, strength and resolve flooding back into him. "All units, the Hirogen have a weakness in their shields. We can beat them. I repeat, the Hirogen can be beaten." As reinforcements rushed to rescue Henry and the other human survivors, news of his discovery spread like wildfire. The galaxy stood in shocked disbelief. After centuries of uncontested dominance, the Hirogen had finally shown a vulnerability, demonstrated by a single indomitable human. The occupied races dared to hope again. But celebration was premature. On the Hirogen throne world, the cruel Emperor Janus seethed with rage at this defeat. He would not let this insult stand. Already, his forces were preparing a furious counter-assault to wipe the humans out completely. Henry knew that an even greater battle loomed. The survival of humanity and the freedom of all races would depend on the strength and courage of Earth and its allies in the coming storm. The odds were still stacked against them. The Hirogen still had the superior numbers and firepower. But now, thanks to Henry Mason, the humans had a fighting chance, and they would make the most of it. Their grim determination was forged in the fires of this first Pyrrhic victory. They would rise to overcome this ultimate challenge, or die to the last in the attempt. One way or the other, the galaxy would never be the same again. As the shock of Henry's improbable triumph over the Hirogen flagship reverberated through the galaxy, the battered human forces regrouped to take stock of their situation. Engineers and scientists pored over the sensor logs from the battle, desperately seeking to understand the miracle that had just occurred. Days passed in a blur of urgent activity and rising hope. Finally, the analysts reached a stunning conclusion. The vulnerability Henry had exploited was no mere fluke, but a fundamental flaw in hydrogen shield technology. With the right weapons and tactics, it could be used to even the odds against the seemingly invincible alien juggernaut. News of this revelation electrified the human resistance. For the first time in living memory, the Hirogen appeared vulnerable. The impossible suddenly seemed within reach. Amidst this surge of optimism, Henry found himself thrust into the spotlight. Hailed as the hero who had turned the tide, he was swiftly promoted to commander and given a new assignment: lead a special task force in taking the fight directly to the Hirogen. Henry threw himself into this daunting responsibility with his characteristic quiet intensity. Working closely with Earth's top minds, he oversaw the rapid development of a new generation of weapons designed to exploit the Hirogen's Achilles heel. Armor-piercing missiles, shield-rupturing cannons, bypass torpedoes, all were forged with a single purpose: to make the Hirogen bleed. But even as the humans armed themselves for a desperate counterattack, their enemies were far from idle. On the Hirogen throne world, Emperor Janus seethed with cold, controlled rage at the news of his flagship's destruction. The failure of his subordinates, the defiance of the lowly humans, these insults demanded a swift and terrible response. Janus summoned his most ruthless commanders and gave them a single, implacable directive: crush the human resistance without mercy. Raise their worlds, shatter their fleets, and bring him the head of the upstart Henry Mason. Among these warlords was Krax, a scarred veteran fiercely loyal to Janus and notorious for his brutality. Krax took to his task with grim enthusiasm, vowing to make the humans pay dearly for their impudence. As Janus's counterattack began, Henry led his newly formed task force on a series of daring raids deep into Hirogen space. Striking without warning, his ships tore through enemy outposts and supply depots like hungry wolves among sheep. The once indomitable Hirogen defenders found themselves outmatched by the humans' new armaments, their shields collapsing like cheap plywood before the onslaught. Yet even as Henry's victories mounted, the Hirogen showed their resilience. Their scientists worked feverishly to understand and adapt to these new human weapons. Each raid was met with fiercer resistance, as Hirogen tactics evolved to counter the threat. Krax pursued Henry's task force doggedly, harrying them at every turn. Ambushes and running battles became the norm, as the human raiders struggled to stay one step ahead of their relentless foe. Matters came to a head in the Arcturan sector, where Henry's ships were caught in a cunning trap laid by Krax. Emerging from hiding, the Hirogen forces pounced upon the human vessels like hungry predators. Though outnumbered and outgunned, Henry rallied his task force to meet the attack head-on. A ferocious battle erupted, the void lit by the actinic flare of missiles and plasma fire. Ships on both sides were reduced to drifting hulks within minutes, as the opponents tore into each other with reckless savagery. In the chaos, Henry found himself face-to-face with Krax aboard the shattered bridge of a crippled Hirogen battlecruiser. The two commanders stared at each other across the smoke and ruin, warrior to warrior, each recognizing a worthy adversary. Krax spoke first, his voice a guttural snarl amplified by his helmet. "You fight well, human, but you cannot hope to prevail. Surrender now and your death will be swift." Henry stood his ground, exo-armor battered but unbowed. "I'll make you a counteroffer," he replied coolly. "Fight me one-on-one. If I win, you withdraw." Krax barked a harsh laugh. "And why should I agree to such a ridiculous proposal?" "Because if you don't," Henry retorted, "we'll just keep blowing your ships to hell until there's nothing left but atoms." There was a long, tense pause. Then Krax unsheathed a wicked-looking plasma blade. "Very well, human. I accept your challenge. Prepare to die with honor." The duel was brutal and primal. Two apex predators locked in a death struggle amid the wreckage of war. Krax came on like a force of nature, his enhanced strength and speed pressing Henry back. But the human commander fought with desperate cunning, using the environment against his foe. Shattered consoles became improvised bludgeons. Torn cables became garrots and snares. As they grappled and punched and slashed, The very ship seemed to quake around them. In the end, as in so many such contests, it was not merely skill that carried the day, but sheer willpower. Battered and bleeding, Henry wrenched the plasma blade from Krax's fist and brought it down in a killing blow. As the Hirogen champion fell, a hush descended over the battlefield. All eyes turned to the two figures on the ruined bridge. I yield, Krax gasped through bloody lips. The battle is yours. We will withdraw, as agreed. True to his word, the defeated warlord ordered a general retreat. The Hirogen ships limped away into the void, leaving the humans battered but victorious. Yet even as his comrades cheered and tended their wounds, Henry felt no elation. He knew full well that this was but a single battle in a much larger war. Janus would not rest until humanity was ground beneath his iron heel. And as reports trickled in from across the galaxy, Henry realized the true scope of the struggle he now faced. Inspired by humanity's example, downtrodden species on 100 worlds were rising up to throw off the Hirogen yoke. What had begun as a lone spark of defiance now threatened to become a roaring inferno capable of consuming the entire Hirogen Empire. Henry exhaled slowly, his senses whirling at the enormity of it all. The liberation of an entire galaxy now teetered on the knife's edge of human victory or defeat. He and his soldiers would not fail the cause of freedom. Whatever bitter sacrifices were yet to come, whatever horrors Janus had in store, Henry swore by all he held dear, humanity would meet them head-on. Henry Mason stood on the bridge of his flagship, the UES Defiant, his eyes fixed on the tactical display. The task force's strike against the Hirogen shipyard in the Hydron system was about to begin. All ships, prepare for hyperspace jump, Henry ordered. Remember, hit hard and fast. We won't get a second chance at this. The human fleet erupted from hyperspace, catching the Hirogen completely off guard. Henry watched as his ships unleashed a devastating barrage of specialized weaponry. The new ordnance, designed to exploit the flaw in Hirogen shielding, tore through the enemy's defenses without difficulty. Direct hit on primary fabrication facilities, his weapons officer reported. Enemy shields are collapsing across the board. Henry nodded grimly. Press the attack. Don't let up until that shipyard is space dust. The void lit up with explosions as human ships pounded the Hirogen installation relentlessly. Massive structures buckled and shattered under the assault. Supply depots erupted in chains of secondary detonations. Just as the shipyard began to break apart, alarms blared across the bridge. Hirogen warships incoming, the sensor officer shouted. At least 24, sir. Henry allowed himself a small smile. Right on schedule. Initiate Phase 2. As the Hirogen pursuers closed in, thinking they had the human raiders cornered, Henry sprung his trap. All stealth units, decloak and engage. A dozen human ships suddenly materialized behind the Hirogen force, catching them in a devastating crossfire. The new anti-Hirogen weapons proved their worth once again, ripping through enemy vessels with terrifying efficiency. In minutes, it was over. The shipyard was reduced to floating debris, and the Hirogen reinforcements were little more than expanding clouds of plasma. Henry let out a long breath. Status report? Minimal casualties, sir, his XO replied. The raid was a complete success. But even as the crew celebrated, Henry felt a chill run down his spine. This victory would not go unanswered. Janus would retaliate with everything he had. Sure enough, within hours, encrypted Hirogen transmissions began flooding in. Henry listened grimly as intelligence officers decrypted the messages. It's as we feared, sir, one analyst reported. Emperor Janus is recalling all his elite forces. They're massing for an all-out assault on Earth. Henry's fists clenched. There was only one option left. Contact High Command, he ordered. Tell them we're taking the fight to Janus. We're going to hit the Hirogen capital itself. The next days were a blur of frantic preparation. A massive human battle group assembled, armed with the latest anti-Hirogen tech. Henry would lead the spearhead aimed at Janus's palace citadel. As the fleet jumped into the heart of Hirogen space, They were immediately set upon by waves of enemy ships. "Multiple contacts!" the tactical officer shouted. "They're coming at us from all sides." "Evasive maneuvers," Henry ordered. "Concentrate fire on their lead ships. We have to punch through." The human armada found itself in a desperate running battle. For every Hirogen vessel they destroyed, 2 more seemed to take its place. Hull breaches and casualties mounted as they fought deeper into enemy territory. Just when it seemed they might be overwhelmed, new contacts appeared on sensors. "Sir," the comms officer called out, "we're receiving transmissions. It's ships from the rebel alien races. They're offering assistance." Henry watched in amazement as vessels of various designs swept in, engaging the Hirogen and buying the humans precious time. "This is our chance," Henry said. "All ships, make for the capital. We end this now." As they approached their target, the sky lit up with energy fire. Janus's homeworld defenses opened up, filling space with a web of destruction. Henry gripped his command chair. "All ahead full," he ordered. "Charge those defense platforms with everything we've got." The human fleet plunged into the firestorm, weapons blazing. Henry's eyes were locked on the rapidly approaching Hirogen capital world. Somewhere down there was Janus, and with him, the key to ending this war once and for all. The UES Defiant hurtled through space, its hull scorched and battered. Henry gripped his command chair as the ship shuddered under relentless enemy fire. Explosions bloomed in the void as more human vessels succumbed to the Hirogen defenses. "We're losing too many ships," his XO shouted over the din of alarms. Henry's teeth clenched. "We push through. All power to forward shields." The Defiant plowed ahead, leading the remaining vessels of the spearhead towards Janus's citadel. Enemy fire intensified, pummeling their shields mercilessly. "Sir, we can't take much more of this," the helmsman called out. Henry's eyes locked onto the looming defense tower. "Set collision course, full speed." "But sir—" "Do it!" The Defiant surged forward, engines screaming in protest. It slammed into the tower with bone-jarring force. Metal shrieked and tore as the ship plowed through shields and armor alike. When the dust settled, Henry found himself sprawled on the deck. He staggered to his feet, ears ringing. "Status report!" "We've breached their outer defenses, sir," his tactical officer replied. "But we're dead in the water." Henry nodded grimly. "Then we continue on foot. All Marines, prepare for ground assault." Moments later, Henry led the charge out of the shattered hull and into the citadel proper. They were immediately met by a hail of plasma fire from entrenched Hirogen defenders. "Take cover!" Henry bellowed, diving behind a twisted bulkhead. His troops fanned out, returning fire with their specialized weapons. The close-quarters battle was brutal and chaotic. Hirogen shock troops seemed to materialize from every shadow, their battle cries echoing off the vaulted ceilings. Henry watched good soldiers fall left and right as they inched forward. Just as it seemed the human assault might falter, new war cries joined the fray. Henry watched in amazement as various alien species, former slaves of the Hirogen, poured into the citadel from multiple entry points. "Push forward!" Henry shouted, seizing the opportunity. "Don't let up!" The combined forces slowly advanced deeper into the citadel's heart, fighting for every blood-soaked meter. Henry's armor was streaked with alien blood and scoring from near misses. As they neared what appeared to be a central hub, impenetrable energy barriers sprang to life, sealing off all access points. "Damn it!" Henry snarled, pounding a fist against the crackling field. "We're so close!" Suddenly, his comm unit crackled to life with an encrypted signal. "Commander Mason, I can get you inside, but I need assurances." Henry hesitated only a moment before responding. "Who is this?" "Someone who wants Janus gone as much as you do. I can disable the internal defenses, but in exchange, I need safe passage off this world. Do we have a deal?" With time running out and casualties mounting, Henry made his choice. "Deal. What do you need me to do?" Following the defectors' instructions, Henry led a small infiltration team to a concealed access point. True to their word, the mysterious ally deactivated the security, allowing them inside. They fought their way through the final corridors, bursting into the central command center just as Janus was activating a console. "Stop!" Henry roared, leveling his weapon at the Hirogen Emperor. Janus turned, eyes blazing with hatred. "You're too late, human!" The two leaders hurled themselves at each other in a fury of blows. Henry's armor cracked under Janus's inhuman strength, but he gave as good as he got. They crashed through control panels and view screens in their titanic struggle. In the end, it was Henry's unstoppable drive that won out. With a final, desperate surge, he drove Janus to the ground, the Hirogen leader's own blade buried in his shoulder. "It's over," Henry gasped, his own wounds taking their toll. "Surrender, and this ends now." Janus glared up at him, defeated but defiant. Outside, the sounds of battle began to fade as words spread of the Emperor's fall. Henry straightened, turning to his troops. "Secure the prisoner. We're not done yet." Henry exhaled heavily, his eyes scanning the chaos unfolding across the capital world. The fall of Janus had not brought the peace they'd hoped for. Instead, it unleashed a maelstrom of violence as Hirogen warlords turned on each other in a frenzied grab for power. "Sir, we've got reports of 3 separate factions engaging in orbit," his XO reported, voice tight with stress. "Our peacekeeping forces are caught in the crossfire." Henry's fists clenched. They'd toppled a tyrant only to watch his empire tear itself apart. "Pull our ships back. We can't afford to lose any more good people in this madness." As days passed, the situation spiraled further out of control. Henry found himself constantly on the move, racing from one crisis to another. They'd barely put down an uprising in one sector before alarms blared, signaling fresh violence elsewhere. In the war room of the UES Defiant, Henry hunched over a tactical display, studying the ever-shifting lines of battle. His face was haggard, dark circles under his eyes betraying his exhaustion. "We can't keep this up," he muttered. "For every Hirogen faction we defeat, 2 more pop up to take its place." A junior officer burst into the room. "Commander, we've lost contact with our garrison in the Tarsus sector. It looks like they've been overrun by loyalists to Warlord Krasnak." Henry slammed his palm on the console. This couldn't go on. As long as Janus lived, his followers would never stop fighting. An idea began to form. Risky, perhaps suicidal, but their only chance to break this cycle of violence. "Prep my shuttle," he ordered, "and bring the prisoner." Within hours, Henry's small fleet made the jump to hyperspace, Janus secured in the hold of his personal craft. They emerged in what should have been empty space, only to find themselves surrounded by a massive Hirogen armada. "Malkar," Henry breathed, recognizing the distinctive markings on the enemy flagship. They'd flown right into a trap. What followed was pure chaos. Human and rebel ships fought desperately against overwhelming odds. Energy beams lanced across the void. Hulls buckled and shattered under the relentless barrage. In the midst of the furious battle, Henry made his move. He took manual control of his shuttle, plotting a collision course with Malkar's command ship. With Janus unconscious in the rear compartment, Henry pushed the engines beyond their limits. "This ends now," he whispered, hands steady on the controls as he hurtled towards his target. The impact was catastrophic. Henry's shuttle punched through the Hirogen flagship's shields, detonating in a blinding explosion that tore the massive vessel apart. As the shockwave rippled outward, a new voice cut across all communications channels. "Attention! All Hirogen forces! This is your new Emperor speaking!" On the bridge of the Defiant, Janus's aide, his own son, seized control. Before anyone could react, he targeted the wreckage of Henry's shuttle with every weapon at his disposal. "The old regime is dead," he proclaimed. "Bow before your rightful ruler or share their fate." Caught off guard by this shocking turn of events, the rebel alliance found itself adrift. Their great leader was gone, and in his place stood a new Hirogen tyrant, perhaps even more ruthless than the last. As the battle ground to a stalemate, shell-shocked rebel officers gathered on the Defiance Bridge. "What do we do now?" someone asked, voice trembling. The ship's computer chimed, a pre-recorded message from Henry appearing on the main view screen. His face was grim but determined as he outlined his final contingency plan. "If you're seeing this, I didn't make it," Henry's image said. "But our fight isn't over. There's a hidden base, coordinates encrypted in this message. Go there, regroup, and when the time is right, strike back against Hirogen oppression once more." With heavy hearts, the remnants of the rebel fleet disengaged from the battle. As they slipped away into the depths of space, the crew of the Defiant exchanged determined looks. Henry might be gone, but the fire he'd ignited still burned. The war was a long way to go.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.